Hello everyone, welcome back to Sustainable Talks with Maria J. So today's topic of conversation will be about milk. It's something that most people drink every day, and I feel like it's a really important thing to consider. I mean, it's one of like our top products on our grocery list, right? So like every time we go to the shops, everyone's there to buy milk and bread. So I feel like milk is a really important product in everyone's life, and we don't really think much about it. So I feel like this video will be really good to have a sit down chat with you guys about the factors that go into producing milk and the effects that milk has upon the environment. To begin with, the food system within Australia and within the globe is actually extremely complex. So I'm not here to tell you which milk you should be drinking, but rather I just want you to start thinking about milk in a different manner, or thinking about like consumer goods in a different manner altogether. We'll be looking at the resources that go into milk production, such as land and water, transportation and all that, and as well as looking at the effects that different types of milk have upon the environment. So we'll be looking at 3 different types of milks today. The first being dairy from cows, soy milk and almond milk. The reason being is I feel like these 3 are the most popularly consumed in Australia at the moment. I just want to go through the facts about this and get you guys thinking in a different manner. So as I mentioned, we'll be looking at different inputs such as water and land, and of course there's also other things like emissions, transportation costs, and we're just going to be looking more on environmental impact kind of side. I won't be looking into nutritional value or ethics or anything else, because it's quite a large topic and you can get into it quite deeply. Of course, there's other factors that you can also consider when you're deciding which milk to buy, including animal welfare, social welfare, nutrition, and of course personal preference, taste and all that stuff. I just hope that by the end of this video you guys can start thinking about consumer goods in a more holistic manner. Hopefully you'll understand what I mean by that by the end of the video. Also, I just want you guys to remember that at the end of the day, when you go out to buy groceries or buy anything, your values are represented through the products that you do purchase. So when you go out to buy dairy milk by Woolies, your money is representing what your values are. If you're going out to go buy organic milk by an independent farmer, then again your money is representing your personal values. So it's really important to remember that your money, your choice, does send a message out there to the economy, to the market, to the farmers. A lot of people are like, oh, you know, the big corporation, it's a top-down approach, they control all of us, but without us the big corporations wouldn't be making money because we're buying their shit. So it's really important to make sure that we're spending our money that we work super hard for good shit, so that way we can portray good values out to the economy, out to the market, and slowly this transition of having a more sustainable lifestyle can start coming into everybody's lives. So just remember, at the end of the day, your money does count. So just think twice before you go out and buy something, because you could be sending out a completely different message to what your personal values are. So just remember that. Every action has a reaction. Another side note that I do want to mention is, sorry, I wrote some notes down because I can't memorize all the stats. But another thing I did want to mention is climates do vary from country to country, states to states, region to region, and as a result, different amounts of resources will be needed to produce milk. If you're in an area that is more drought prone, then you will require more water resources for your production of milk. Whereas if you're in an area that's more prone to wet weather, you're lucky enough to rely on natural rainfall, therefore you won't have to use irrigated water. I'm not going to say that like cow's milk is better than soy milk, because soy milk can be unsustainable in certain regions but very sustainable in other regions. So it's really important to do your own research into the milk of your country, of your area, and find out what works for you, because at the end of the day, I'm not willing to spend $6 on milk, to be honest, even if it's organic, pasture-fed, grain-fed cows with like minimal CO2 emissions. Like, I can't afford that. So it's really important to, I guess, find bits of your values represented in your milk, if that makes sense. For example, if I'm purchasing dairy cow's milk, I avoid look with the labels of the supermarkets on them. So the Coles branded milk or the Woolies branded milk, because a few years ago they were ripping off our farmers by not paying them very much. So I don't want to support that value there. I do want to support our Aussie farmers who are working hard to produce the milk for us. So whenever I do buy milk, I try to buy an independent brand or a brand that is well trusted, and I know that the money is actually going to the farmers, not to the big supermarkets. So let's get into it. According to the Food and Agriculture Organization, about 6 billion people worldwide drink milk or consume other dairy products. With over 264 million dairy cows worldwide, producing nearly 600 million tons of milk every year. Now those are some really big numbers, and to produce that much milk, there are millions of farmers, there are millions of resources being put in to produce these dairy cow milks, and as a result there's also going to have a lot of outcomes. I just want to get you guys to wrap your heads around that, like 600 million tons of milk every year. Like I can't even imagine what that much milk looks like, let alone imagine the devastation that it could be happening on the environment. Let's look at our first input, which will be water, and I'm going to do this compared across 3 at a time. So we'll look at water in terms of cow's milk, soy milk and almond milk. Sorry, my memory died and I didn't realize, and I kept talking about this for a while, so I just had to re-record this. So the first input that we're going to look at is water, and we're going to look at it across the 3 different types of milk. So water in the terms of dairy milk, soy milk and almond milk. So water is a major factor of life. The global average water usage is 1,050 liters to make 1 liter of cow milk. So most of the water isn't directly consumed by the cows, i.e. drinking it. Instead, a significant proportion of the water that is used to make cow's milk is actually put into the feed that is used to feed the cow. So whether it's soy crops, sugar crops, wheat, whatnot, most of the water that is used within the dairy industry is indirect water usage, and that is through the feed that is used to feed the cattle. Of course, the amount of water used to grow these crops do vary from climate to climate, as well as soil and production processes. So for example, if Australia was going through a drought, therefore we would need a lot of irrigated water to water our crops rather than relying on natural rainfall. So therefore, of course, the water usage will intensify. However, in that case, then we might also look into importing feed into Australia. Then of course that would again increase our transportation costs and emissions associated with transportation. So it's really a bit of a tricky thing to measure, because of course these uses of resources do vary as the climate changes, and there's a lot of factors that determine all of this, so it's quite complex. So when compared to soy milk does a lot better in terms of water usage. It's about 297 liters of water to produce 1 liter of soy milk. That being said, I was reading a journal article where a study was compared organic and inorganic soy milk, and it did find that organic soy milk tends to use less water as compared to inorganic soybean farms. The reason being is organic soybean farms tend to rely on rainfall more than irrigated water. So in that sense, organic soy milk uses less water, so therefore it's a little bit better for the environment. But again, of course, you do have to take into account weather patterns, soil types and production systems within different countries. So when you guys are looking into milk, I think it's best to do a bit of research into your own brand of milk within your country and see how that's being made. The next one is almond milk. So to make a tiny little almond, you actually require 5 liters to grow just an almond. That's quite ridiculous, I think. Roughly estimated, to make 1 liter of almond milk, you would require 384 liters of water. So that's a little bit more than soy milk, but definitely a lot better than dairy milk. The only issue with almond milk is that almond trees are really thirsty plants, so it does require a lot of water, and this can be an issue in drought prone areas. So actually 80% of almonds in the world are all produced within California, and they grow about 2 billion almonds. So 2 billion almonds times 5 liters of water, that's like what, 10 billion liters of water, rough estimate. My maths isn't that great. So that's quite a lot. So the issue there was quite a few years ago, California was going through a severe drought, and this did affect the almond crops over there quite badly. A lot of the farmers had to bore into underground water systems and aquifers, so as a result groundwater depleted quite quickly, and it didn't leave much water for other farmers in the area as well, because there has been such a growing demand for almonds, especially almond milk, in the past couple of years, with it becoming so popular. So the drought had quite an impact on local water resources, and I think the similar situation can occur within Australia. So a lot of the farmers within Australia are located along the Murray River or Darling River. That's like South Australia, Victoria, a bit of New South Wales. With the Murray, it actually begins up in Queensland, and it travels through New South Wales down to Victoria, and there it becomes a bit of the Murray-Darling, so that then trickles into South Australia. So if you think about it, upstream is actually located in Queensland. If we're having a severe drought within Australia, there's already such a large issue with water usage along the Murray-Darling. I can only imagine it's going to get a lot more ugly during a drought period. So upstream, like if Queensland has their farms over there and they use their portion of the water, the trickle down flow throughout the Marley is going to just exacerbate and become less and less and less. Even though they do have water licenses in place to monitor water usage, let's be honest, no one's out there all every day monitoring how much water every farm uses along the river system. It's impossible, and there's a lot of issues with that right now. There's the drought, like you can imagine, whatever's water left over, by the time it gets to South Australia and Victoria, there probably might not be that much. Then as a result, the farmers there are going to have to tap into underground water, and that causes a whole bunch of issues there, because underground water actually takes hundreds and hundreds of years to accumulate. By using all this much water, you're depriving water from other systems as well, so that then continues creating more impacts within other areas that we don't even think about. So that's quite a big issue as well. Okay, so the next factor that we'll look at is emissions. So with emissions, it's quite general knowledge, I think, that cows are pretty bad for global warming, because they produce so much methane gas that's contributing to global warming. In about 1 cup of cow's milk, there is 600 grams in CO2 equivalent. That's quite a lot compared to soy milk, which is only 200 grams, and almond milk is only 174 grams. So when it comes to CO2, cow's milk are obviously higher, therefore they're probably more detrimental to the environment than the other two. However, I was reading a UN report, again by the Food and Agriculture Organization, where they found that greenhouse gas emissions from the dairy industry has increased by 18% between 2005 and 2015, as milk production also increased by 30%. Normally this would have seen a increase of about 38% in greenhouse gas emissions, but due to efficiencies within the industry over that period, they only saw an increase of 11% emissions. Now that's really good, because it's sending out a positive message that dairy farmers are actually trying to work really hard on reducing their emissions and their contribution for climate change. So for example, if you don't like any other alternative milk but dairy milk, and you happen to find a brand that's really acting upon reducing their contribution to climate change, then by all means, that's, I feel like, a sustainable enough brand, or a reason enough to go for that brand, because you're supporting their values and their efforts in reducing their impact upon the environment. So if you guys do find a brand in milk that does that, please let me know, because I would love to hear more about it. I don't think I've heard of any in Australia yet, so that will be quite interesting. The next resource that we're going to look at is land. So about 2/3 of agricultural land in the world is being used to raise livestock, including beef, and cattle. That is a lot of animals and a lot of meat. So that's only about 1/3 that's used for plants. So a huge issue with, I guess, cattle in particular is overgrazing and soil impaction, which then can lead to erosion and loss of topsoil. With cattle, their hooves compact the soil quite a lot, so it's an issue because it doesn't allow room for plants to grow through the soil. So there's no more spaces in the soil for any water to filter through, for plants to grow through, so it literally just becomes barren. So when there's a lot of cattle within the same area that's not being moved around much, that can become a serious issue to the environment. And one thing I didn't mention earlier is that cattle can also lead to eutrophication. With cattle, their manure is really nutrient dense. They're pooping everywhere and they're compacting the soil really badly. For example, when it does rain, the rain does wash away the manure, and that turns into runoff, and it runs off into the local river or the local stream, and it does result in eutrophication, where the excessive nutrients result in a depletion of oxygen in the water. So as a result, all the animals within the water, especially fish, they all die because they have no access to oxygen. All of the oxygen is being sucked out of the water by algae blooms and all this stuff because of all this excessive manure. So that's another serious issue with cattle, including dairy cows. So it's really important, if you guys are buying milk, maybe have a think about that. Maybe have a think about how different, because like obviously some farmers give a crap a lot about their land, but some farmers, who knows, maybe they're run by the big corporations, so they don't give a crap. So it's really important to have a look into the brands of milk that you do decide to buy, and have a look at what they say about their impact on the environment. That being said, soy and almond are both plants, so therefore they also require a lot of fertilizer and pesticide. Again, that can contaminate runoff water, and it can also lead to erosion. So with plant-based farms, if the crops aren't rotated, it can exacerbate environmental conditions and farm conditions. So for example, when you have this one crop growing in the same location year on, all the naturally occurring nutrients in the soil are depleted, so the farms do rely heavily on fertilizer and pesticide to maintain the health and to yield their crops. When it does rain, there's always excessive fertilizer and pesticide that get into the runoff, and once again that ends up in the local streams, and once again you have environmental contamination. Another issue with almond trees in particular is that almond trees, not only are they water thirsty, but they also require pollination. So I did some research, and apparently in California, beekeepers actually travel to California for the pollinating season, and a couple years ago it was actually pretty bad because it resulted in 25% of the bee population dying off. That was because almond farmers were using a lot of pesticides to maintain their trees. However, once the bees came in to pollinate, not only were they collecting pollen on their back, but they were also collecting a lot of pesticide, and as they flew from one flower to another flower, there was accumulation of pesticides, and then eventually 25% of them died. So 25% might not seem a lot, but when you're talking about thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of bees, that is a lot. Like a quarter of the population of the bees that came in to pollinate these almond trees to make almond milk for us died. That's a little bit sad. Another issue I forgot to mention with soy milk, is that the largest producers of soy milk is actually in the US with 41%, Brazil, and that's followed by Argentina. So in Brazil there's a serious issue because deforestation is occurring in the Amazon. So about 16% of the Amazon has disappeared already, with 7,000 hectares disappearing every day. And the reason why this is happening is because of soy cropping, cattle and agricultural fields. So there's an ongoing demand for agricultural food, and as a result they're deforesting the Amazon to quench the thirst of the global population. As a result of that, a lot of what has been deforested in the Amazon is turning into soy farms. And this is a serious issue because the Amazon is a massive carbon sink for us, and it's absorbing all the carbon dioxide as much as it possibly can. However, every time we deforest an area of the Amazon, we're releasing the carbon dioxide that has been absorbed back into the atmosphere. So it's a lose-lose situation for us. A, we're losing an amazing, wonderful natural site with amazing biodiversity, and then B, we're just making the whole climate change, greenhouse gas warming situation even worse by releasing what had been captured in these natural carbon capturers back into the air. Does that make sense? I hope so. So it's a lose-lose situation. So in that sense, yes, soy milk might be better at water usage, it might be better in terms of ethicalness. However, when you're drinking soy milk that has been produced in Brazil, it's most likely that it was produced in what used to be the Amazon. So in that sense, if that's one of your values, or if that's something that affects you, or that just doesn't sit right with you, then maybe you can avoid drinking soy milk that's been made in Brazil. I'm pretty lucky in Australia that we produce our own soy milk, so every time I do go buy soy milk, I always look at the back of the package to see where the product has been made. We have this new thing. 1 second, I'll go grab it. So this is one of the brands that we have in Australia. I think I prefer this one as opposed to the organic one because I find that So Good is a bit more creamier, which I personally prefer. But I do switch in between the two depending on prices as well, because sometimes I'm very poor. But if you have a look here, it does say made in Australia from at least 88% Australian ingredients. That's not really good of me, is it? No. So yeah, when I do buy milk or any products that I do eat, I try to look for this sign and see how much is actually produced in Australia. Anyway, so just to put things into perspective, I also did a bit of Google mapping. So 7,000 hectares is about 25 Sydney CBDs, and it's about the size of New York City. So imagine the size of New York City being demolished every single day. That's insane. And then according to another article about almond milk in the Californian region, because almond milk has been quite popular in the past 3 years, there's been a growing demand for it. About 23,000 acres of natural land was converted to almond farms. Again, this is quite detrimental to the environment. I think the article mentioned that the natural land also included wetlands, so you know, really unique ecosystems that are being demolished to produce more food for us. I find that to be a bit disheartening, and it really does play a factor in the choices of products that I do consume. One of other factor that you guys should consider will be transportation costs. I didn't really look into any stats about it, but I'm just going to talk about it generally because it does vary from country to country, state to state. So with transportation costs, it can get quite tricky because A, depends on the location of where your products are produced, and B, it depends on how you're transporting it as well. So for example, if I'm in Australia, then I would obviously opt to buy Australian milk rather than milk that's produced overseas. And then with that said, like if I have the option, I would probably try to purchase milk from farmers that are more geographically closer to me, so therefore the transportation footprint is also smaller. But that said as well, it's also quite difficult because I'm not too sure where the milk is being processed. So the soybeans might be grown in Victoria, but then they're all taken to South Australia to be processed and turned into milk, and then they're shipped back to New South Wales and back onto my grocery shelves. Like, I feel like it's really hard to trace transportation costs. So just maybe keep in mind that obviously local is best. So if you have the option of buying locally produced milk, then try to do that. My family used to go down to Wollongong, which is about a 3-hour drive from, 2-hour drive from Sydney, and we used to know a local dairy farmer down there, so every time we'd go to Wollongong, we'd pop by his place and bring like a massive water drum with us, and we'll fill that up with milk, and that would last us for 2 weeks or so. So that was really nice, and that way we could also pay the money directly to the farmer and cut out the middleman in between. So if you do have that option, that's a really nice thing to do as well. And oh right, one more thing I didn't mention about this is the ethics of dairy milk. So I know a lot of friends who have gone vegan now don't consume dairy milk because of the animal welfare of cows. So it's really disheartening what happens with cows. So I don't know a lot of details about it, but I'll just run it through you quickly. So with dairy milk, what they do is every time a female cow is pregnant, she has her calf, and after a few days or few weeks, the calf is removed off her, and then she is plugged up to a machine to suck all the milk out of her udders. And this just happens on repetition. So every time she has a baby, the baby gets taken away, and we basically are drinking her baby's milk. So in that sense, it is quite disturbing. I'm pretty sure there are videos and documentaries out there about this if you guys want to find out more, but it's really disturbing. I mean, if we were to do that with humans, and we were to knock up all the women in the world and then use their milk and drink it for ourselves, oh, that's so disgusting. It is seriously disgusting. It is so disgusting. So I just want you guys to consider these factors, like, when you guys go out and do decide what type of milk to drink, like, what impact, how much water usage is being put into making this milk, what kind of land impact is that having upon in your local area or worldwide, who knows. Like, that's another tricky issue, like, because soy is in so many products that we eat. Like, I wouldn't even be able to find out where, so like if I was to eat chips and it had like some sort of soy byproduct in it, like, who knows, that soy product could actually have been grown in the Amazon and I'm contributing to the deforestation of the Amazon by eating my chip. Like, it's really hard, and at the end of the day, I don't want this to get you guys down, but I do just want you guys to become more aware of the impact that you guys are having on the environment, upon our society, and that you guys can actually make a very active choice to stand up for your values and make sure your money counts. Small changes over time do help a lot. So maybe instead of having dairy milk every day, you could have it once a week or as a special treat when you go and get your coffee. And I understand personal preference does come into it. Like, to be honest, I hate hot coffee with soy milk. It just tastes disgusting. But I don't mind drinking soy milk as its own. So when I do have coffee, I sometimes prefer to have dairy milk. And when I just want something milky, I just drink soy milk. So that's how I do it. So, when you guys do go out to buy things from the shops, you guys do have a voice, you guys do have an option, you guys do have a say with your money. So hopefully from this video you guys will have become more aware of the impacts that milk does have on the environment, and how they all have varying impacts on the environment. And from there, hopefully you can pick out values that you find relevant to yourself, and from there hopefully you can make better choices when you guys go shopping for food. Yeah, so if you guys have any comments or any feedback about today's videos, please let me know in the comments down below. If you do like what I'm trying to do here on YouTube, please subscribe. It does really motivate me, and it gives me the idea that I might be doing the right thing here. If you guys have any future topics that you guys would like me to talk about, please do let me know. I think the next one I might do will be about plastics, because that's a huge issue in Australia, And if you guys are international, please let me know how your country is doing things differently, so maybe Australia can learn a thing or two, because to be honest, we're pretty fucked up over here. We really are. Like, our government's not doing anything. To them, they don't even know what climate policy is. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and see you next time. Bye bye.